Right, a very good morning to you. Welcome along this Monday morning. We're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed because we had a lie-on. It turns out you're all having lie-ons too, and that's why we're starting a little bit later. From the data that we've seen, it turns out that a lot of people who would normally listen to us on our commute from, 7:30 in the morning, you sit there and you wait for us to come on, and that's not happening as much. People are actually listening to us later on in the day, and we're like, okay, well, we understand how these things work, Owen's kind of rolling from his bed to his desk and not much in between. His commute has come down from like 20 minutes to less than 10 seconds. And so we're starting a little bit later, Owen. And I, for one, welcome our new late starting overlord, as somebody tweeted this morning.
There is no data to support this decision, Ger. It is literally just to do with having more of an eye in. Let's call it let's face up to what the reality is here. We can enjoy this. Everybody at home can enjoy this because I'm sure people let's not forget the fact that people were probably getting out of the bed to catch the 7:30 start time anyway. You too can be like us and enjoy that sweet extra 30 minutes in bed now.
Yeah, okay. There's news to talk about. We'll come back to that. Anyway, we'll come back to that. There is news to talk about this weekend. We had an exclusive on Saturday afternoon where we broke the news that the decision had been made and that Mick McCarthy had been informed that he was no longer going to be the Ireland manager. And what we've seen over the last 24 hours, I think, is people coming to terms with the fact that that has happened, and a bit more information and data to build a theme here has come out. So we now know Stephen Kenny's the makeup of his backroom team. We know Mick McCarthy's in line for a good old payday, like not once but twice. And Robbie Keane is in limbo at the moment. Interesting kind of saga on Robbie Keane over the last 24 hours or so. So we can there's a lot to unpack, but all in all, this is not a million miles away from what we predicted would happen last week. On
exactly. Once we knew that the decision could be made, that the playoff was going to go beyond July and there was no chance of it happening before then the FAI could actually make a decision. We were kind of saying last week that the FAI could make a decision in the next couple of hours if they wanted to, speaking from the vantage point of last week. I don't think many of us actually expected them to go ahead and do it. So I think, first off, most people have been quite impressed with how swiftly the FAI have actually acted and how quickly they have acted. They've clearly had a very clear idea on which way they wanted the international team to go. It may have been more of a cost-saving measure. Who knows what it would have been in the long run if you had to employ both men. But I think really initially you have to say that it is a little bit of a turn from the FAI from December 2018. Now, of course, there's a new hierarchy. Things have changed massively at the FAI since December 2018, and a lot of time has passed since then. So you can't really blame any organisation who have shifted a little bit, because the whole process of appointing Mick McCarthy in the first place was that he was the safe pair of hands to get us to Euro 2020. There is still a playoff to be played, and they have, in reality, decided that Stephen Kenny is actually the pair of hands that they would like to guide us to Euro 2020. Now, of course, it's complicated by the fact that there was a contract to be honoured, and the FAI need to be seen to be doing everything properly at this point, and honouring a contract would be one of those proper things to do. So it is more than just a football decision, far more than just a football decision. But there are numerous different threads here about what the FAI wanted, about perhaps the inner workings, about how annoyed Mick McCarthy may actually be about this, because I don't know about you, Joe, but he certainly came across with great grace at the weekend, and perhaps this opens doors for him as well as a club manager over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, it's win-win for Mick McCarthy in many respects, in that he got the team to the playoff, and if they don't win in the playoff, it has no reflection on him because he's got no involvement with the team. He gets paid the golden handshake that he was going to get anyway. He is now free to take up a new job, so there's no sense of him being in limbo or having to do a renegotiated deal with the FAI at a much lower level, obviously because of the straitened financial situation that they find themselves in. And it appears that if Ireland qualify, he's due a bonus for Ireland's qualification. Now, I mean, you would like to think that that's the type of thing that down the line, a manager who isn't actually involved in the team qualifying at the end waives that, especially in the situation that the FAI find themselves in. But I don't know. I mean, footballers and contracts, it's written down. That's the FAI have said that they would be happy to honour that. So a slightly bizarre situation where he would actually end up making 2 million odd from today on if Ireland were to qualify for the Euros, which is a lot of money for an organisation like the FAI. It will be entirely more than the full backroom team and the next manager are getting over that period of time as well, which, look, I guess it just goes to show how out of kilter those contracts were in the first place. But so it's worked out pretty well for Mick McCarthy, and I think that would be one of the reasons why he has taken this with such good grace. Frees him up for the job market, pays him a lot of cash straight away, and removes all the pressure. So you can definitely see why it's a win from his perspective.
It seemed, listening to Ger and Eoin's on with Joe yesterday, that the FAI would be rolling in cash next year, where Ireland's actually qualify for Euro 2021, and therefore actually paying Mick McCarthy is actually just a bit of a footnote. The bonus is just a bit of a footnote, but actually it's not. Every penny counts in the organisation at the moment, particularly an amount of cash of that magnitude, that actually the opportunity would be to perhaps, I don't know, balance other areas of the organisation where they'd qualify for Euro 2021 and not have to kind of shovel out a huge bonus at this point. But that's not his problem. That was something that was organised in a previous regime, and possibly for some time, the last absurd fee that is sort of handed out from the FAI for an amount of time. We don't know, but certainly Stephen Kenny's wages will be lower. They seem a bit more normal for an international manager of the scale of the Republic of Ireland team, and I guess that's probably something to be a bit more content about over the next couple of years. But yeah, like it's like it's not really, you're not really comparing like when you look at other international managers and what they would be getting bonus wise. Like I saw the figure in the Irish Times this morning that Southgate's bonus for qualifying England for the 2018 World Cup was 280 grand, and then Mick McCarthy's bonus is thought to be somewhere in the region of 1 million to qualify them for this Euros, which I perhaps, of course, England and qualification isn't as big a deal for us, but perhaps crystallises just how important this tournament is for Ireland. And it was so important that they had to actually install two managers. They had to get the safe pair of hands in before backing the exciting new manager back in December 2018. And as I've said, that has shifted a little bit. But just like on Stephen Kenny, is this not a really good time to be coming in as an international manager? Like, it has been put out there that perhaps there's still a chance that his first game could be against Slovakia in a playoff, which of course is a baptism of fire, not an ideal first game. But is this not kind of the feeling of a pre-season for everybody at the moment, that the season has stopped, that the changing of a guard in any situation now in football perhaps comes with its benefits as well, that everybody is starting from an equal-ish footing, that the teams that have built up a lot of cohesion, the managers that have been there for a long time and have taken a couple of steps back. I think this is actually a good time, and I think that if he gets a couple of friendlies or a couple of Nations League games under his belt as Ireland manager, this would have been a perfect setting for Stephen Kenny.
Well, sorry, I was going to ask you, do you mean then that if the best possible scenario would be to have that game against Slovakia and then immediately after it, the final? So whatever your team are doing, you're at an advantage, and it is that proper baptism of fire, because if you a couple of games and everybody goes back into their normal routine, and if there are a couple of friendlies, you've got to assume that there will be months of football under everybody's belt by the time the actual qualifier happens. So which of these you're saying qualifiers? So your friendlies, a couple of months of football, and then the qualifier playoff.
Well, I think that would be an ideal situation for everybody involved. Like I think the idea. Like I definitely think that it's not the worst time to be coming in. I think it's actually a good time to be coming in as a new manager. But at the same time, would you take the option of having a bit of a betting in period, especially if we expect a bit of a change in the style of play? And I say a bit of a change in the style of play, you would probably take the betting in period, wouldn't you? You
would, of course, you would. And like at the same time, the point you made about it being the great equaliser, everybody is losing muscle wastage, and certain footballers are partying hard, it turns out, as opposed to actually, well, maybe there's some load-bearing exercises going on in Kyle Walker's house that are not prescribed by the strength and conditioning team. But look, a lot of other footballers are actually, taking this as downtime and having a pre-season. We'll come back to that story a little bit later on. But I think you're right. I think that certainly because of the change in style, and because it's a new era, a couple of games, play those playoffs, qualify for the tournament in Dublin, and that's the greatest start that anybody's ever had in international football. Yeah. We're allowed to get a little bit carried away in this darkness at the moment about a new manager. There's definitely a shot in the arm for everybody involved in Irish football right now, because it is unwritten. no one knows what's going to happen. There's like months and months and months of this now where we can go, yeah, but Stephen Kenny's our manager. And then like the videos will start doing the rounds of the under-21 team playing well. The videos will start doing the rounds of highlights from Dundalk's campaign. We're going to talk to Richie Towell a little bit later on. Like, you can see that this is exactly the right thing from a morale point of view for Irish football to do as well.
Absolutely, Ger. Like, I don't want to be too negative on Mick McCarthy, especially considering his tenure is now over. But there was a similar tone to how it was when Trapattoni started to, I guess, get bogged down a little bit post Euro 2012. Similarly with Martin O'Neill post Euro 2016. Like, without being just the harbinger of doom really here, I just kind of felt that even if we qualified for Euro 2020, things might have taken a similar turn. I don't know why I had that feeling, because he's obviously been a great manager for the country in the past. But I don't know, there was just a lot of negativity around that Georgia draw away, the losing to Switzerland away, even the frustration that came with drawing with Denmark at home and wondering, why couldn't we play like this at all times? There was a feeling that we were underachieving still under Mick McCarthy, and I just felt it was going to get worse.
I look, and again, I don't want to nitpick, but I would say that using the phrase "great manager," I disagree. I don't think he's ever been a great manager for Ireland. I think Mick's a championship manager. We've had this debate again and again and again, and ultimately, we don't know what Stephen Kenny's going to be at international football. So I wish him all the best. Now, let's get to some of the comments, because we've obviously had a raft of comments rolling in over the whole weekend. If anybody has any comments for us today, you can get us on WhatsApp, 0879 180 180. Just add the number there, and we'll take your comments across the rest of the show, especially extended show from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock every morning here on OTB AM across all of our channels. And we've already seen bigger numbers this morning than we would have had at 7:30. So it turns out you are all lying in, rolling out of bed and going, what am I going to do? And it turns out you want some top quality sports content. And that's why you come to us. Here we go. Davey says, sure, Mick would never beat Slovakia. Look at the way we played against feckin' Georgia away. A fair point. A very fair point. We finished third in the group. It's the right decision. Stephen Kenny is a great football man and will be a force in world football with him in charge, says Frankie. IJ says, what a mess. He was 100% cut down by the knees before he was given a chance. I'm not even the biggest fan of McCarthy, but he was absolutely shafted by a ridiculous contract. So disrespectful by the FAI. Rob says, the job is going to be too much for Kenny. He'll be eaten up and spat out. He's a media darling at the moment, but that will change after a few bad results. McCarthy should have had the job until our interest in the Euros ended. I mean, Rob, I see a lot of people making that point that it was a contract to take Ireland through to the Euros, but it wasn't. Obviously, it was a moment in time. Specifically, it ran out at the end of July. So what you're saying is the FAI would have needed to renegotiate the contract that they had with McCarthy and annoy the person who was a loyal employee at under 21 level who was going to be the manager after that. Potentially, if the playoffs got kicked back down the road, Mick would have been in charge for some of the qualifiers for the World Cup that was supposed to be Stephen Kenny's gig. How would that have worked? Would you have said, oh, Mick's not going to take the Ireland team now, Stephen Kenny's going to take this Ireland team, a different squad, a different style of play, and then Mick comes back in for the playoffs? Like, it was a complete mess. And so I actually don't think there was any other way around for the FAI here. But the issue of respect, we haven't spoken about this once. The big issue that still remains, Owen, is what happens with Robbie Keane. So Claudine Keane, Robbie's wife, was on Twitter critical of Dan McDonnell, saying, oh, hang on a second, this isn't true. It's not what's going to happen. And Dan was saying that Robbie wasn't going to be part of the management setup and had some details. I think this might have been on Sunday. A lot happened over the weekend, so if I got any of the specifics of the time wrong. And subsequently, Dan's story proved to be entirely accurate, and Claudine says that she was finding stuff out from the media, which isn't a great look either in all this, because you don't want Robbie Keane to be walking away and having ill feeling towards the FAI at the end of this, while at the same time Stephen Kenny has to pick his own backroom team. So there's just a little bit of management to be done around this. Like,
Robbie Keane is still a young coach who is starting off on a new career. The fact is, we just don't know how good Robbie Keane is going to be as a coach. You don't know how successful he's going to be as a coach. To be looking back on this situation in a few years' time, thinking to ourselves, God, why did we burn that bridge, would obviously be a terrible situation to be in. Like, it's interesting to look at what Claudine Keane has been saying over the course of the weekend, that there hasn't been any real official communication, or that it's interesting that they are finding it out via the media. Like Gary Owens obviously yesterday was quite reluctant to actually say anything to Joe on the status of Robbie Keane, because he didn't want this to be dragged out through the media. He did want to actually go and have a conversation with Robbie himself, or the FAI needed to have a conversation with Robbie themselves. So I'm not sure how those two things tally. Perhaps Dan obviously had a story that maybe the FAI didn't want to get out at that particular time. So it's hard to know what to do with this situation, especially because is there a role in the 21s now? Is everything at capacity is the question I would have. And then Robbie Keane
just on that, right? Like, so obviously Robbie Keane's contract probably was a senior gig, and it looked like Robbie Keane was being groomed to be Mick McCarthy's successor, but then the Stephen Kenny thing happened, and so that all went tits up. But like, Robbie Keane could easily do what Keith Andrews did and work with the younger players, who then you get the under-21 gig, or you get involved with the under-21s. You've already had some experience with them, and you're deeply embedded in that. And then it becomes inevitable that you're going to be involved with the senior team and with Robbie Keane's profile, and you would hope that the experience that he's adding at club level, if he wants to be the Ireland manager, go and serve your time and get a full understanding of exactly what's going to happen, because he's, as you say, he's a young man. There's like plenty of time for him to be the Ireland manager.
Totally. My question is there room for him on the under-21 train? And it just seems that they had moved to almost appoint a few people under the 21s between Crawford and O'Shea, for example. Are we now?
I don't think there's any room there. No, doesn't seem like, is there?
So that's what I mean. I just don't know where Robbie Keane now. I don't know where he falls into all of this. It just seemed that the FAI acting quickly and decisively has been a theme in everything they've done over the last couple of days, telling Mick McCarthy he's not got the job, telling Stephen Kenny he has got the job, appointing Stephen Kenny's backroom team, sorting out the hole now left in the Republic of Ireland under 21s. It just seems unusual that a very important part of your financial outlay as an FAI employee has been left hanging. That just seems really unusual, because everything else has been done really quickly.
Well, obviously, they just need to get a deal done and negotiate something. And maybe Robbie becomes an ambassador, and he's no involvement in the football side, but he clearly wants to be involved in the football side. So, look, we'll come back to that a little bit later on. We'll talk to Stephen Hunt about it and talk about he's part of our show a little bit later on, Richie Towell as well. And I'll tell you exactly what's coming up in just a minute. But first, the full sports bulletin here at, 8:17 a.m. this morning, this Monday morning, the 6th of April. Republic of Ireland manager Stephen Kenny says there's a lot to look forward to once football resumes. The sport is obviously in limbo at the moment, and there's still no confirmation of when Ireland will face Slovakia in their European Championship playoff. But he's done an interview with FAI TV, and he's expected to do a round of interviews today as well, where he'll talk about his philosophy and his excitement about what the role will entail. Robbie Keane could still have a role to play with the FAI. That was the news coming through over the last 24 hours. FAI interim CEO Gary Owens has revealed that talks are ongoing with Keane and his agent. Obviously, Keith Andrews, Damien Duff and Alan Kelly are part of the senior setup. It doesn't look like there's any room there. And John O'Shea was named as Jim Crawford's assistant at under-21 level. By the way, an underrated appointment here. I think John O'Shea is like somebody who has had one of the best and most interesting football careers that any Irish player has ever had. And so you're really hoping, I don't know enough about what impact he's having at coaching level at Reading, but I'm very excited about what kind of a career he's going to have. Also seems like a really good person. UEFA President Alexander Seferin has warned the Champions League and Europa League could be abandoned if coronavirus restrictions remain into September. The preferred option would obviously be to play the fixtures behind closed doors. Both competitions have been indefinitely postponed. And Kyle Walker is facing disciplinary action from Manchester City after breaking the UK government's rules on social distancing amid the coronavirus pandemic. The England defender has apologised for his actions after it was widely reported he held a party at his home last week, is what it says here. But what kind of a party was it? According to the tabloids, it was a sex party. Himself and one of his mates invited two young ladies around, and one of the ladies ended up selling her story to the Sun newspaper. And the details of it are quite lurid and obviously quite funny. But poor Kyle Walker, he should not be stepping out of line right now, because people are going to be asking, is Kyle Walker any good at football? Is he really the best right back that Man City have and that England have? Is that where the world is at? I think somebody in Kyle Walker's situation should have just kept himself a little bit under the radar if he could have. The PGA Championship is set to be rescheduled for August, according to reports in the US. The tournament was due to take place in May, but was obviously postponed last month The major is expected to remain at Harding Park in San Francisco. Trump had a conference call with many of the leading sports organisers over the course of the weekend and made it clear that he expects as much as possible to go ahead as scheduled. So we'll see. We'll see if that's actually going to happen. 20 minutes past 8 this morning. Here's what's coming up on the show. Sports pages, we're 10 minutes behind, but obviously it's a big story that we were trying to tease out there. If you guys have views on Mick McCarthy and Stephen Kenny, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can also just leave a comment on whatever stream you're watching this on. The YouTube comments are the easiest ones for us to get. We're also looking at the Periscope and Facebook ones, and we'll bring you through the sports pages now. Richie Towell's going to join us in 10 minutes. We've got the lockdown lowdown coming your way at 8:45. Plenty of sports in the lowdown this morning. Stephen Hunt at 9 o'clock. Mayo's Mount Rushmore at 20 minutes past 9. Who else could we have got other than Nathan Murphy to talk to us about Mayo's Mount Rushmore? I think he's going to put Kevin Kilbane on it.
He probably will. Like, this is football man Nathan Murphy. Like, Kevin Kilbane, in terms of Nathan Murphy's lifespan, I'm sure would have been a heroic figure for him, not just as an Irish footballer, but as a representative of Achill and as a representative of Mayo. And of course, he's gone on to have a great career as a Mayo GAA fan after his football playing career. Why wouldn't you put him in? It's my question.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, we'll deal with that in just a little while. Let's bring you through the papers this morning.
OTB AM.
So, offtheball.com, football, the 32 Mount Rushmore's episode 1, Mayo's Greatest Sports People, is our lead story. It's whetting your appetite for what's going on this morning. And then we also have a story about Nigel Benn's brother, an NFL legend. Both pass away after COVID-19 diagnosis. This is Shane Hannon's story this morning. The brother of legendary boxer Nigel Benn has passed away. Mark Benn was the joker of the house when they were growing up. This is a tweet from Nigel Benn, and obviously everybody passes their condolences on to the Benn family. And then the NFL legend, just trying to work out who this one is. So Saints kicker Tom Dempsey, who was just 63. Sorry, Tom Dempsey has passed away after contracting coronavirus as well. So he was a record holder and a legendary figure back in the 1970s. So coronavirus having an impact on the sports world in terms of fatalities at the moment as well. And then obviously there's loads of reaction and analysis to what's gone on over the course of the weekend with the Stephen Kenny situation. So that is your lead story on offtheball.com this morning. And okay, so next up it is the Irish Independent. The Irish Independent obviously leading, of course, this morning with all of the McCarthy and Kenny stuff. And they're obviously interested particularly in the Robbie Keane stuff, Robbie and FAI on collision course as tense talks loom, is Aidan Fitzmaurice's story, which also is the lead on the back of the Herald. Kenny's time is now. Dan McDonnell, new manager's goal is to create a modern team that tackles a stereotype. This was kind of one of the key debating points yesterday between Gary Breen and Damien Delaney about the confidence that Stephen Kenny is going to give players immediately and the work that's going to happen on the training ground to give the players confidence to keep the ball. And Gary Breen was saying that he thought that was actually happening under Mick McCarthy. Damien Delaney was saying there was no evidence of it. So we'll talk with Richie Towell, we'll talk with Stephen Hunt a bit later on as well. And that story, we're happy to pay McCarthy bonuses if Kenny brings Ireland to the Euros.
This morning, Ger, leads with the dawn of a... Sorry, Ger. The dawn of a fascinating new chapter. Too eager to hop in there. The dawn of a fascinating new chapter is the headline on the Irish Examiner, a photograph of Mick McCarthy and Stephen Kenny shaking hands. It's Liam Mackey writing this morning. He's also writing that the FAI boss is happy to pay McCarthy bonus if Ireland get to Euros. That is Gary Owens and his quotes from yesterday. Also asking who will step up from Kenny's kids. And FIFA prepares for wave of appeals against wage cuts. This is the ongoing wage-paying saga in Premier League football and beyond about whether or not clubs should be putting staff on the furlough scheme, despite having quite an amount of money in the bank. Manchester City not going to get on that train, it seems. So there's going to be a lot of appeals, according to this piece, in a report seen by Reuters yesterday about FIFA and pay cuts.
Yeah, we can get into that story for the rest of the week. The Irish Times this morning, Kenny looks forward to unprecedented first year. It is going to be an unprecedented start to a new manager's career where there's immediately a playoff and the opportunity to qualify for a tournament that's happening on your doorstep. Like, look, it's a mouth-watering prospect. Ken Early's column, McCarthy Part 2 was no blockbuster, more of a flop. And understated manager offers a ray of light in dark times. Verve and brio Kenny's teams play with can often seem at odds with his public persona. Yeah, so look, I think people are going to start discovering a bit more about Stephen Kenny. We've put up all of the interviews that Stephen Kenny has done with us over the last 18 months to 2 years. They're all up available for you now to look at on offtheball.com, and that kind of gives you an insight into him as a person, his background, and what kind of a character he's going to be. This notion that he's a media darling, it's actually not true. It's not that he's like this Oscar Wilde figure dripping with epigrams. He can be very thoughtful in interviews, and ultimately is a brilliant communicator. But it's not that he's somebody who's like, it's not like he's going to be Roy Keane, where there's a massive sudden surge of people reading and listening and talking about every single thing that he says in press conferences. It's actually the opposite to that. I think people trust the career arc that he's had, and that's why people are excited about it. I just think it's relatively simple. Obviously, Brian Kerr had a fairly similar level of excitement when he ended up being unveiled as the Ireland manager, and that didn't work out for Brian Kerr or for Irish football. Now, there's obviously loads of different reasons why that didn't happen, but so obviously that's a bit of a cautionary tale for him. What's next?
The London Times this morning, Ger leads with fans' anger at Liverpool for furlough use. Rivals City rule out seeking government cash. This is Paul Joyce and Paul Hurst reporting this morning. You've also got a photograph there of Kyle Walker. Walker shame over call girls, and a virtual race watched by 4.8 million people. This is the virtual Grand National, which of course took place on Sunday, grabbing about half the audience the actual Grand National got 12 months previously. So I think it's a roaring success. The most watched cartoon ever, perhaps, in the UK. Has anybody put those statistics together? But 4.8 million people for the virtual Grand National. An incredible stat, really.
Yeah. Welsh rugby player Jonathan Davis owns the horse that won the virtual race. Are they virtual owners, or is this like real horses mocked up into cartoons? How does it work? I don't know.
Unfortunately, Ger, I didn't actually put aside the 12 to 15 minutes of my day on Saturday to actually delve into what the virtual Grand National was. But I think you're onto something there. Given that there is actual real connections to the horses here, there's bound to be some sort of reality in it. And maybe describing it as a cartoon was an insult to everybody involved.
The Herald's back page this morning, players can't be treated as kids, says Richard Dunn in his column. Kenny's blueprint for success. Weight of 5 heavy, says Darcy. So Declan Darcy's been talking about the try for 5 and how much of a burden it was on the Dublin team last year. And then Robbie out and cold. FAI set for talks to decide Keane's severance deal. So it's looking like they are talking payoff here, according to Aidan Fitzmaurice's piece, as opposed to actually finding a role for him over the next couple of years. So we'll wait and see exactly what happens with that. I'm sure there'll be information in the next 24 hours or so, and that loose end will be tied up.
The Irish Sun this morning is Clappy New Year, with a photograph there of Stephen Kenny applauding the supporters. Kenny assures fans the future is bright green. Shanks for nothing then is the headline around the Liverpool story. Cop slam furlough move, while National a virtual hit for charity, as we've just mentioned. Neil O'Riordan has an exclusive here that Mick call to wish pair luck. So Mick McCarthy rang Stephen Kenny yesterday to wish him good luck as Ireland boss, and he reckons his successor could not have had better preparation for his dream job.
So the back page of the Irish Star this morning, I've no axe to grind. Mick happy to pass on to Kenny and wish his new boss the best. This is Paul Lennon, who seems to have spoken with Mick, or certainly Mick's people. Kenny's now the Ireland boss with his 450 grand annual salary kicking in well ahead of the original planned start date of August the 1st. It's not a surprise, and I'm not disappointed with the decision, although I'm disappointed that I can't finish what I started. This is what he was saying last week. And then they have Robbie talks go on. This is Paul Lennon's story as well. Keane's wife Claudine tweeted yesterday that the FAI must show legendary Ireland coach the respect he deserves, while the association is keen to accommodate the country's most capped player and leading marksman. It won't impose the 39-year-old on Kenny. So it's they also talk about what Gary Owens was saying to us yesterday. And James McLean claims the British government should stop. I can't just read that there. And talking about giving out to footballers It's ridiculous. You've got Matt Hancock saying we should take a pay cut. No one seems to like footballers. We've got livelihoods too. People might take this the wrong way, but we do work hard for our money, he says. So, as ever, James McLean happy to put his head above the parapet and talk about that. So, the ongoing stuff about pay cuts and the PFA versus the Premier League versus English football versus English society, that's a story that we're going to come back to in the coming days when everybody gets a chance to digest the news that we have a new Ireland manager.
The Irish Daily Mail this morning is Robbie sidelined. That's the main headline. Doubt hangs over Ireland legend Keane's part in FAI setup, and bosses agree to a wage drop. So this is Premier League managers are siding with clubs in the battle over wages, with the majority ready to accept a temporary cut. And in the Irish Daily Mail this morning as well, they're also revealing their Football All-Stars dream team.
The back page of the Mirror this morning. New Ireland boss Stephen offers hope amidst the darkness of lockdown. King Kenny FAI succession plan brought forward. This is Paul O'Hare's story there. And they also have a story about revolt. Premier League players are in full-scale revolt over proposals to bring in drastic pay cuts. They've set up a captain's WhatsApp group, and all 20 are being urged to stand strong together, reject the plans and not break rank after one club skipper branded the proposals disgusting. So that is an interesting story, which is going to bubble away over the next couple of days and weeks as well. So that's the back page of the Mirror.
The Daily Telegraph this morning leads with a photograph of the gates outside Anfield. Not the Spirit of Shankly supporters group wants to know why Liverpool have furloughed workers. Gordon Taylor then says clubs must reveal cash crisis. PFA chief says players will lose trust about wage cuts. So basically, Taylor wants to see the players get full disclosure on where the finances are going should their wages be cut. FA could furlough staff meanwhile in bid to mitigate £100 million shutdown loss, and National draws 5 million viewers and raises £2.6 million.
The Guardian this morning is a picture of Shane Lowry. I'm not happy to live off one open title. Shane Lowry on Portrush triumph and life in the shadow of McIlroy. So it's an interview with Shane Lowry leading the back page of the Guardian this morning. And better to play behind closed doors than not at all, says UEFA. So we had Jonathan Walters on the show on Friday, and he was saying that you can't play without fans. The whole point about playing is to bring fans together, and the only reason that you will be playing these games behind closed doors is for money. And I totally understand that viewpoint. I do also understand the viewpoint of trying to get the industry back on some kind of beginning of a footing. Because ultimately there won't be, if the TV deals collapse and the clubs have to pay back the broadcasters or are in debt to the broadcasters, then the players won't benefit. The fans ultimately don't benefit either. It's not an ideal scenario at all. And I wonder, is there kind of a halfway house where some deal can be worked out? And then they also have Premier League clubs may go it alone and pay cut talks. So again, that story's going to rumble on.
Just very briefly before we get into the last newspaper, has the events of the weekend and the last couple of weeks not shown that entrusting Premier League footballs to be quarantined within a World Cup style camp to allow this thing to happen is actually a ludicrous idea? The actions of Jack Grealish, Kyle Walker breaking rules, despite actually kind of preaching the opposite in Kyle Walker's case. It's perhaps a more difficult task than we thought to actually get Premier League footballers to do what they're told and pay or play for the pay that they're getting, hundreds of thousands a week, and actually allow this thing to go ahead and make sure that the TV money comes in, the thing that pays their wages. But we'll see. The Irish News is where I'm going to conclude. O'Hagan says county football probably a no-go in 2020. This is Down captain Darren O'Hagan. Says the GEA will always be there no matter what happens this year, but the talk of social distancing measures being extended means he doesn't see much inter-county football being played at all this year. You've got the picture there of Big McCarthy handing over the reins. Stephen Kenny would lead the Republic of Ireland into the Euro 2020 qualifier, and McKenna says consistency, the missing ingredient for United. This is Kieran McKenna, United's first team coach.
Okay, that is the papers for now. It is 8:34 this morning. I'm going to talk with Richie Towell. Going to talk with Stephen Hunt. Going to bring you Mayo's Mount Rushmore. If you've got thoughts on all that, 087 918 180 is the WhatsApp number. Pardon me. Or you can always tweet the show @OffTheBall.